This is an Eye in the Sky News report.
What's up guys, thanks for tuning in to my newest review. Real quick before I start, I wanted to remind you all to like and subscribe if you enjoy my content. Thanks and enjoy. America has always been a nation embroiled in war, with its eyes set on the end goal of freedom. Many times, the enemy of this freedom has been an outside or foreign power, like the British, Spanish, or Germans. On some grim occasions, however, Americans have declared their own kin as the killers of liberty, and in the 1860s, just this happened when the young nation entered its first and only Civil War. How close have we come to entering another conflict like this since? And how far astray could that second conflict lead the nation? Well, today, we're delving into an intriguing alternate timeline that sees just that happen as numerous events such as disease, prohibition, and the Great Depression lead the 1930s United States of America to ultimately crumble and separate into over 20 different independent nation-states. War and conflicts rampage throughout many of these territories, and citizens have been forced to take to the skies in all manner of plane and zeppelin just to traverse this new world safely. On top of this, a new breed of piracy has begun plaguing the continent, turning even the skies crimson with blood and theft. Will you fall victim to the perils of this world, or will you fight to keep your place in the skies? Well, in 2003, Fasta Studios let you find out when they released their pulp 1930s epic by the name of Crimson Skies: High Road to Revenge. This title is actually a sequel to a cult classic of sorts that was released exclusively on PCs in the year 2000 and is known simply as Crimson Skies. In both games of the series, you take the role of Nathan Zachary, the leader of the infamous pirate gang known as the Fortune Hunters. In this world, the United States split apart at the beginning of the 1930s, causing numerous nation-states to form with their own governments, cultures, and militaries. A couple notable examples of these would be the Empire State, where New York formerly was, and the nation of Hollywood, taking up most of California, which is now run by former Hollywood executives and big shots. In a world as tumultuous as this, piracy has begun to run rampant, and large gangs have formed, such as the very fortune hunters that you lead in this story. These gangs cut out swaths of territory for themselves and revel in all manner of debauchery, like gambling, womanizing, and robbery. This retro tale starts with gang squabbles over gambling debts, but slowly leads into a murder mystery of sorts. Your good friend, Dr. Fassbinder, one of the greatest aircraft designers alive, thinks that his life is in danger and that an old rival has come back, not only for revenge, but to steal the plans for his greatest creation yet. Sadly, despite your best efforts, he succeeds in this nefarious task and sets you on a quest to find out who this rival is and what he wants with these plans that could alter the world as you know it. Throughout this 8-hour classic, you'll journey through 4 unique locations spread across all of the Western Hemisphere, flying 11 plus different planes, and encounter hordes of cutthroats and heroes on your journey for revenge. Overall, I really liked the story on offer here. I believe the developers were attempting to make a game akin to a playable movie, and in many regards, they really succeeded. Exploring the world portrayed in Crimson Skies is amazing. Every aspect of it, from ship designs to old-timey radios, costumes, and even the music, all harken back to early 1900s pulp magazines and comic books with their over-the-top style. My only real complaint is that I wish I got to see more, as while the story is complete, the world feels like it has so much left on the table to explore and see. Outside of that though, the voice actors are great, the set pieces are like nothing you've seen before, and the cutscenes weaving them together are some of the best on the original Xbox for sure. Nathan Zachary, played by Tim Amundsen, is extremely charismatic and funny, serving as an Indiana Jones or Han Solo type hero. Throughout the game, he cracks all sorts of funny one-liners and jabs, not just at your enemies, but also at your cast of allies too, and even while in the heat of battle. His journey from a selfish pirate to an unexpected hero is extremely fun to behold, and makes me wish Microsoft, who published the game, would bring this amazing franchise back from the dead. Next, we'll get onto the gameplay, because it's yet another factor that sets this gem apart from many other titles of its era. Crimson Skies is an arcadey dogfighting game at its heart. Where other titles may focus more on things like realistic wind resistance and physics, this title aims its sights at being fun above all. Starting off, the controls and mechanics of this combat seem fairly simple. You begin by being shown the basics in turning, air braking, and boosting. Soon, however, the game begins to introduce a bunch of different maneuvers you can pull with the sticks. By pressing the right thumbstick and pointing it, as well as the left thumbstick in specific directions, you gain the ability to do 14 different acrobatic feats, ranging from barrel rolls to backstalls and beyond. These are instrumental in combat, especially on the highest difficulties which I played on, as you'll be outnumbered by up to as many as 15 to 1 at times. Simply flying in a straight line will get you killed insanely quickly, so utilizing any advantage you have is vital. After you've learned to survive, you then get introduced to the many weapons the flying machines of this game have on offer. Every plane you fly in game will have 2 weapons, those being one primary and one special weapon. Each have unlimited ammo and vary in their abilities at taking down different sized targets. However, the special weapon will usually do more damage and take longer to recharge after being used than their primary counterparts. As I mentioned earlier, there are around 11 planes you'll get to fly in the base game. Each of these planes comes equipped with a unique loadout of one of the 2 primary guns and one of the 10 specials. This gives every plane a unique feeling, as well as their own strengths and weaknesses. One plane may come equipped with something like a concussion rocket, which fires a hugely powerful shell in a straight line. This weapon may fail at hitting more nimble planes in a dogfight, but when used on larger zeppelins, it excels with flying colors. The next plane may instead have a shotgun cannon as its special, which lacks the range of the other weapons, but when used up close, serves as one of the most damaging tools of destruction in the game. Each of the planes also differs in a number of categories, like speed, defense, and firepower, which sets them apart even more, allowing you to change up your ride for any occasion. Not only that, but you can actually upgrade your ships as well, making your favorites in the lineup true forces to be reckoned with. You'd think that was it, but no. Planes happen to not be the only weapons available to you in this epic. You're actually given the option of landing at and taking control of 3 different types of anti-aircraft guns during many encounters. These could be located on a friendly zeppelin, a building, or even on a vehicle like a boat or a train. Tons of interesting set pieces in the game utilize these cannons, and it was always epic to see lead exploding out of the barrels and taking ships down one by one. These also build in to part of the gameplay circle of Crimson Skies. See, at least on higher difficulties, one plane or anti-aircraft gun may not be tough enough to withstand entire fights alone. Instead, what you'll find yourself in fights doing is swapping between and piloting multiple ships and cannons as you land and get in and out of them. This allows you to 1. Use a massive variety of weapons in every encounter, and 2. Have a much larger health pool that is desperately needed in some of the later game encounters. In the end, this led to a much more diverse and unique combat experience when compared to many other more solely plane-centered titles. One minute, I was swerving between high-rise buildings, avoiding gunfire and leading my enemies into a trap, and the next, I landed near and climbed into an anti-aircraft gun, which allowed me to mow down my unsuspecting foes. This combat loop really never gets old, and it, along with the numerous different maps and story motivations, meant that by the end of the game, I was wishing there was more to come. This isn't to say that there were no issues, however. While overall a surprisingly polished experience, I did encounter a couple issues. One example would be that reaching the edge of a map causes the game to take control of your plane and to turn you around automatically. Most of the time this is fine and works as intended. At other times, however, like on the Chicago map, the game will accidentally murder you by doing something like in this clip here. I really only dealt with this issue that one time, and I imagine it's only going to be a problem on the Chicago City map, as it's densely filled with tall skyscrapers that the other maps lack. Outside of that small gripe, the only other problem I can think of with the game itself is the occasional slowdown. At times, in moments with tons of action going on, you could tell the game dropped from its usual 30 frames per second. It didn't happen too often, and the drop felt like only a couple frames, so it didn't really affect the experience, but it's something to be aware of. Now, for anyone taken aback by my mention of it being 30 frames per second, I do have some information to share. There is another fairly large complication when it comes to playing Crimson Skies: High Road to Revenge. The emulated version of the game runs like absolute garbage, chugging along at near 10 FPS at times, with some visual bugs added in there too. I tried to run it on every emulator, and while they offer upscaling to improve the graphics far beyond the original, they perform so badly that I just cannot recommend them as real options. Truly, the only serious way to experience this game is on an Xbox console. Currently, this title is actually on Xbox Game Pass and is available for purchase in the stores on any console from the Xbox One to the Series S. This version seems to run at a higher resolution than the original, but is limited to 30 frames per second and has no widescreen mode. I have heard you can get some TVs to force the game to widescreen mode, but I haven't tried, so that's a route you could explore if you wanted to. The version on the original Xbox, which I played for this review, lacked the improved resolution of the version on newer consoles, but did natively support widescreen for me, which was nice. I hope the emulator vastly improves in the future and allows more people to play this action-packed classic, but in the meantime, the Xbox versions are perfectly adequate, and I highly recommend all of them for anyone interested. Now let's move on from the technical side of the review and get into how exactly the game is structured, mission and level-wise. As I mentioned earlier, you'll be exploring 4 different locations throughout your playthrough. Each of these areas function as small open worlds of sorts, and have a variety of missions to do, planes to pilot, and collectibles to find. These levels were breathtaking to behold and featured extremely unique settings, making each truly different from the other. You'll fly over remote tropical islands, soar past sandy mesas, weave through bustling city streets, and trek through forgotten mountains. Each location wasn't massive when compared to the open worlds of today, but still offered just enough hidden locations to explore and secrets to find to keep you entertained. Generally, these secrets came in the form of hidden caverns or valleys that had ship upgrade parts inside. If you find enough of these parts, you're able to use them to improve one of the planes you've collected, making your favorite flying machine that much more destructive. This adds new incentives to seek out every nook and cranny of the map and allow an additional layer of depth to form in the game. In one playthrough, you most likely won't be able to upgrade all your ships, meaning that in subsequent playthroughs, you could change up your experience by prioritizing and utilizing different planes than you did in your first. This means there's a tad bit of replayability in case you wanted to delve back in for another adventure. Next came the planes you could collect while playing. See, on many levels, you'll find planes parked at hangars and runways that you can land near and claim as your own in a moment's notice. If you bring these planes back to your zeppelin, which functions as your home base, hangar, and upgrade station throughout the campaign, you'll be able to keep them and utilize them in any mission going forward. At times, you'll also pilot a unique plane for a specific mission, and in both that case and when finding one while exploring, it's on you to return it back to your zeppelin. Otherwise, you'll lose access to it for the rest of the campaign. With these planes, you and your pirate crew can cause mayhem in the skies above levels. The zeppelins and planes you see in-game flying around the various locations are not actually just set dressing, but real targets you can attack for money and ammo. Upon attacking a zeppelin, for example, they will call out that they're under fire from your gang, the Fortune Hunters, and unload on you with their many anti-aircraft guns. Sometimes, they'll even call in backup from nearby planes, adding more jeopardy to the fight. I thought that this was an amazing addition to the game, as it added just that bit more of role-playing, realism, and choice that you don't get in most other titles. In fact, this mechanic isn't even advertised or explained in the game, and it's purely optional to you whenever you're feeling brave. To conclude this section, we'll get on to what actual missions you'll be doing in Crimson Skies. At each new location, you'll be greeted with a variety of different job offerings from the locals that will test your flying skills in a number of ways. These range from races to smuggling contraband, escort missions, and even to more cinematic story-tied battles. You can accept these missions in any order, and upon completion, they all offer substantial amounts of money, which is a resource needed to upgrade your planes, repair your ship at one of the many repair stations, and to make bets on yourself when racing. Initially, that seems like plenty of things to spend your money on, but as the game progresses, you begin to realize that you receive far more money from the missions and zeppelin attacks alone to spend even a fraction of it on anything useful in-game. Maybe an improvement the developers could have implemented was to provide less cash to the player and make it more of a scarce and hard to earn commodity. As for the missions themselves, however, I thought they were all a blast. Dogfights never got old, and even on the hardest difficulty I played on, the game rarely strayed into feeling unfair. Just when you got tired of the basic dogfights, the game would throw in one of the 3 or 4 boss fights. When those got old, you were allowed to race or smuggle contraband through many of the beautiful maps. Even after that, you'd get a mission where you may be firing cannons off of moving boats and trains while all hell broke loose around you. So while some systems of the game feel like they aren't fleshed out as much as they could be, like the money I mentioned earlier, when combined with the rest of the overall package here, like their brilliant missions, maps, and the exciting combat, you end up with a product that is truly worth playing. And playing you'll be doing, as I should mention that upon completion, you'll actually unlock an additional extra hard mode to add a new challenge to your next run. On top of that, there's even a robust multiplayer mode built into the game with 16 players, 6 different modes, and 5 unique maps. Sadly, at least at this current moment in time, it's only playable locally and on split screen natively, but there does seem to be a way via a service called X-Link Kai to get the multiplayer working if you want though, so I'll leave a link to whatever resources I can find to help you set that up in the description. Before I give my final thoughts and rating, I'd like to finally touch on the soundtrack here, which was honestly beautiful. The late Stan Lepard, who'd composed music in games like Age of Empires 3 and Guild Wars 2, did a wonderful job at capturing the 1930s overly dramatic kind of style in the musical score here. Every encounter had a unique feel, whether sad, angry, or tense, and a lot of that came down to the brilliant music behind this game. Some of the best songs in the track list were Champagne with a Twist, Crimson Are the Skies, and Fortune Hunters Arise. And that, my friends, just about wraps up our look at this often forgotten classic. Some knock this title and say it lacks the complexity of its predecessor. However, I feel that the brilliant cast, great graphics, exciting gameplay, and endearing soundtrack all combine into a must-play title for any Xbox owner. There truly aren't any games like those in the Crimson Skies series, and a setting as unique and as interesting as this deserves your time. I can only hope that the corporate overlords over at Microsoft remember how great of a gem they have on their hands with this series, and expand upon the brilliant foundation they already set here. For all these reasons and more, I'm giving Crimson Skies High Road to Revenge an 8 out of 10.
I hope you don't mind if I leave my socks on. Maria?